Okay, great. David, thank you for asking me to join you on this. It's been a lot of fun working with everybody on this screen as well as yourself, talking about just this crazy world we live in and all the different things that we have to consider. My gosh, we got to hit quota and address all the different changes in the marketplace, as well as a new technology that promises to, solve world hunger, help us all just hit our number and go to Coachella without lifting a finger. Jokes aside, it's a pretty important topic. I think David did a great job introducing these four gentlemen in front of us on the slide. They're going to be speaking to you a little bit later about different things. And what I hope to do is just set the stage for all of you in a way that can allow you to think creatively in your own seat, as well as have thoughtful conversations, both up directly to as far as the board or even in the VC level, or down all the way to your entry level people, so they can understand how to have a productive life in the world that we're working in. All right, next slide, please. So I like to talk about history because I think it's really important to understand why we got here. I think everyone knows this graphic intuitively, whether you lived through it or not. You've heard these stories. It's the World Wide Web starts, and then VCs hit, and we learn a lot. I call that Web 2.1.0 or Startup 1.0. Dot bomb happens. We go through a recession. We get out of the recession. Obama says, free the capital and start funding. The economies in the world are dying. And then we start funding again, and startups begin around 2012. And then what happens next is the fastest growing market we've ever seen before COVID. Then after that happens, the party gets killed. We're kind of sitting around going, well, what's going to happen? And then somewhere around the middle of 2020, end of 2020, we go, well, we're going to figure this out. When we get back to work, when we start returning to the office, ChatGPT launches, and here we are in this room today. So let's just go to the next slide. That red mark is where I'm going to focus for a minute. Now, if you think about it, that's 8 years of effort. And if you're plus 1 or 2 on either side of that red area, you might have had enough time to reach what Jason Lemkin mentions here, which is how quickly can we scale experience? I know he's focused on the VP, but I think this is a universal principle. So if you can scale leadership at every level in 5 to 6 years, then you're doing pretty good. The problem is that works really well if you can control the outcomes. Now think about the middle of the red line again. As we're doing this, lots of disruptions, lots of ideas, lots of new products enter. And then just as we're getting a handle on things, COVID says, hey, party's over. So let's go to the next slide. What happens in the middle of all of this is a great gold rush to get talent. And I lived through this personally. So we're either being told to hire and promote quickly, or we're just being shoved people directly. What that means is sometimes I'd come into work and say, hey, I'd hear, hey, we hired 3 DDRs. It's like, okay, who are they? Don't worry about it. We needed them anyway, and they're highly recommended. Let's go. So, in a perfect world, we'd hire the best people for the best jobs. And if they were not prepared, we'd weigh the effort of enablement, weigh the effort of reinforcing that enablement, et cetera. But a lot of times we didn't have that. So people were promoted quickly with the just figure it out model. And this is not an indictment. It's just what we lived with, right? It's like, if you're hungry, you stop looking for the highest quality food and you just look for nourishment. And what you're hoping is eventually you'll catch up. Some companies did. But here's the sad part. Since this graph ends, I took this one on purpose. The sad part is this, that since this graph, we've been at 70% or 74%, somewhere in the middle in terms of talent shortages. That means that, let's go to the next slide. That means that companies like the ones we all work in have been extremely vulnerable, and they become more and more vulnerable as this shortage continues, particularly in the US. I took this from Manpower and a Carta statistics value, and a lot of this will come from Carta, the Bridge Group, or Manpower. But basically what you're seeing here is that if you're in a Series B and you're looking for your sweet spot and top hires, so is everyone else according to the graphic below. So that means that we have a lot of issues with time and seat, best practices being absorbed, codified, and structured in a way that allows us to be adaptable, learn from our experiences, and become better every year. And instead, what we're doing is we're running around in survival mode, trying to get things going. And then, let's go to the next slide. We have innovation. All these solutions start popping up because, well, like David when he started Tenbound, like Kyle when he started Sales Loft, or Manny when he started Outreach, we are working somewhere and we realize there's a problem. And because we understand the way the world works, we're going to dive in and we're going to go out and solve a problem and maybe become a participant as a founder. So this is 2016 or no, 2018, excuse me. This is what the world looked like when David started structuring Tenbound. This is what amazing solutions look like. This is where, hey, if you have these problems, you just pick one of these and you're probably going to be okay. You figure it out and you pick the best stack for yourself. You're amazing. And then once this is set up, all you end up doing is going on over to process and hiring. And then you just start plugging people in, right? That was the idea. But here's the problem. Let's go to the next slide. This is what the world looks like today. I mean, it's a microfiche at the library now. We have to zoom in so far just to start vetting. And to be honest, I think that we're doing a great job keeping up, but I bet you there's a lot of things that could fit into here that it's just like, at what point do you continue? And that's another reason why Tenbound has a library value that you can find inside of our website. So you can go down and zoom in more closely on each of these categories. It's not a plug, but it's just a symptom of where we're at. We have spent so much time and money hiring people that have knowledge gaps inside of a talent gap. And then the economics of spending money on solutions that are supposed to fill in these other gaps. And then we hire sales enablement, we hire Tenbound. And yet, let's go to the next slide. It's not paying off. And this is, again, this is not anyone's incompetency, but the competency model is still a problem. We're not hitting quota. I mean, this Bridge Groups just showed a massive drop in their survey. That's significant. So we're spending all this time and money on enablement and solutions, but we're not catching up. We're actually getting worse. And again, it's a myriad of problems. And you know, compounding this a little bit is inflation and what our customers are going through as well. Because we have these problems, we tend to be the canary in the mine. Imagine how their problems are. Their problems are just as bad or exasperated worse than ours. So let's go to the next slide. So quotas keep going up, and so do the OTEs. But again, that's an inflationary model. But that means that the cost of the business goes up as well. And it's inside of these problems that we get the relationship between supply and demand. So we have a demand for competent people that can lead, that have had the experience over time. Just going back to the red bar, they're pushed out of the window, possibly as early as possible. And then they reinforce ideas that are pushed on them. They make decisions about solutions the best that they can. They make decisions about hiring the best that they can. And then these models of achievement and payment continue to have challenges. Let's go to the next slide. What people really need to start thinking about is, if we're going to start applying something like AI, it's not going to solve the underlying problem. A big example that I talk about, I hope to talk about, I should say. I'm sorry, I've talked about this a lot. before this discussion, but there's this whole idea of AI being the one size fits all. Really what's happening is it's the diet and Diet Coke. Or if you look at the 80s, it's diet bread, diet gum, diet salad dressing, diet. Everyone's just slapping the label on. Or organic this, organic that. Is it really though? Is it really? So what we're going to do next is look at this from a different perspective. If we really want to be good at this, is that AI has a principle of use, which is you're either gathering information, preparing information, feeding information, or using information to make better decisions. In other words, any answer that you get must be truly vetted. Otherwise, you're just simply taking information and blindly putting it in. If I hand you something like flour, how do you know it's not arsenic? You just feed arsenic into your sales pot and then you kill the business, right? So AI can feed you things, but if you're not taking human beings to vet that against things like question one, your North Star, against the true gaps and shortages you have, against, hey, I can use AI like a force multiplier, but do I really need a nuclear weapon when all I'm trying to do is use a very fine chisel like Michelangelo and finely tune? You know, first impact is the most dangerous impact, but then the subsequent ones are modifiers. So making better decisions using AI is also critical for your GTM. And the last three are, I'm just going to simply say this. What are you doing when it comes to experience and competency gaps? You can't just replace people. If you took the time to hire them, you must have thought they were great. And if they're not doing well, it's your fault. So you can't have a set and forget, then fire. So I set, then we're going to forget, then we'll retrain them. Well, he doesn't get it. She doesn't get it. Let's replace them. It doesn't work. It's also a problem that we're seeing in the marketplace. So if you're going to be effective, you have to understand what your business is, what true pipeline looks like, what is the customer journey for using, buying, or exceeding with your product, what true revenue looks like. And then when it comes to these answers or questions, making sure that whoever is making judgment, the final judgment, that they are absolutely impartial and dedicated to the role that you have in your company, the role in the marketplace. So what I'm hoping that we'll do through these discussions today is that we'll create a model or an idea set that'll allow you to start working through some of these issues, but then also move on to the next step, which is how do I get execution on all these things? So I think with that, I'm going to just pause really quick and see if there are any questions.
Vic, we had one question came in from the chat in that if they're not using AI right now in their go-to-market, how should they think about integrating it into the strategy?
Definitely. I think this slide is a great start. In other words, if you do all of these things, what's going to happen to you is that you're going to have a list of non-negotiables that are aligned with each department. So if you're only thinking about your own team, you can still apply this. It's what am I doing to feed the corporate KPIs? So if I'm a sales development leader, my pipeline or direct sales or renewals, depending on how my team is structured, feeds into that directly. But then what emerges are gaps similar to the talent shortage or the competency shortage. So do I have enough people or do I have the right people is a common one that we all are aware of. Okay, so you don't have perfect players, but every player can become a better player. Perfect is actually dangerous, so let me eliminate that word. I don't have the top end players yet, but guess what? As somebody who both in my personal career and my personal life has cherished the idea that I don't draft. On my kids' teams, I've never drafted, but we've gone to the championship so many times. I don't believe in top players. I believe in the best players. So if you're looking at your players and trying to train them or get them to a better level so they hit quota or they stop sucking and say value propositions or objection handling, I'm just being very simplistic, or prospecting better in a key industry or a key problem, from all of that data will come gaps. And then you're going to start looking for the force multiplier. And the force multiplier is similar to what I went through very quickly, which is, am I trying to get a faster answer, or am I trying to get better information served to me, or am I trying to get information that can be combined with what I already have? So what solution or what area is it really the problem? So I'm going to just use Gong for a second. Now, full disclosure, they are a customer of Tenbound. They're not sponsoring this. There's nothing behind me when I say this. But they might be able to help me using part of their platform where they've deployed AI to help me serve up information. Okay, so that's one aspect. But then again, I might also go out and ask my tech team to get one of the AI engines that are out there. It's not all ChatGPT. There's about 15 of them actually. And maybe they'll spend time training it using information I have that I pull out of Gong or Outreach or SalesLoft or et cetera, or Lean Data, or whatever I'm using. And we'll train it using those live pieces of data, and then out will come a model or an algorithm that will start to correctly share what I'm looking for. I could be looking for sentiment, engagement and hero data, or if then what. It's like, if they interact with this and then they do this, and when this thing happens, what happens? I did this at a company where we found out that what we really wanted was 7 transactions, and we stopped worrying about how big they were, because on the 7th one, statistically, we had a 60-something to 70-something% chance of being invited to the bigger deal. It's basically blackjack. How many face cards do I need to see? So somewhat of a longer answer, but we're really just trying to create casino odds with a statistical benefit that's better than average. I like to use the number 60% or better, even though you can technically start with 51%. But I want my team in a position when I'm using AI, my team being, it doesn't matter if you're directly on my team or my team of peers, my friends in my company. I want everyone to have that statistical confidence that says, we may not get this right. In fact, we might fail 100 times before we figure out what the true recipe will be. But we're looking for AI to focus on one initial problem, one simple thing, and then from there it grows. In other words, a simpler metaphor would be like this. You don't start by building your first house. You usually start by replacing the faucet in your kitchen. And then you do a little bit more, and then you gain a little experience, and you do a little bit more, and before you know it, you remodel the kitchen, and now you've done the bathroom. Pretty soon you've done it all. And now maybe go buy 5 acres and start building your homestead. I don't know, but that's a great way to start with AI, is just focus on one simple thing and make sure it's something that everyone can get behind, or everyone can get greater benefit from. So I hope that answers the question. A little bit long-winded, but it's a critical one.
And Vic, there was one other question
Sure.
around pitching AI solutions to your boss.
Oh,
So
that's a good one.
If you find an AI solution, yeah.
Kevin Smith and I are going to talk about that a little bit later, because I know Kevin from another community that we're in together called Operators Guild, and him and I actually have we just got into this philosophical argument to the point that we went to a shared space on our own dime and literally filled the room's whiteboards with all this stuff. And the one thing we kept coming back to is, so how do you get people to believe this? Because there can be a stigma around snake oil or smoke, right? So having things in front of you, very similar to the way I started the answer before, that are tangible, that are important, and that are real, are critical to that conversation. The second part is you must have a tight understanding, because you'll come in one day and everything will change.
Okay, great. And so, and you're talking to Kevin today at
Yep.
12 o'clock.
Absolutely.
Next session. So excellent. Okay,
Great.
Vic, Super informative, and we're gonna have these slides available after the show. This is being recorded as well, and super excited to dive in. The next one coming up is with Jordan Henderson.
Yep.
Correct? You're gonna be
Yep. Jordan Henderson. You guys might know him from one of his podcasts. He's done two massive podcasts that everyone's pretty well aware of.
okay. He is the RevOps genius, and he's using AI in various formats that you guys will be talking about. And stick around, everybody. Stay tuned for the rest of the day. We've got a number of great talks coming up, and just super excited about the conference. So, Vic, thanks so much. I'll see you in about 6 minutes.
You betcha, everyone. Talk to you soon.